All right, so I'm going to talk about the chain breaker tools. Shop style. So I have two here that are the same. One is just very old, the other one's newer. And then there's another style that's pretty new. So I got the CT-4 3. This one here, it actually accommodates Campanolo chains, so it has a little peen here at the bottom that gets pulled out. I'll show you that. Other than that, it will do all speeds. 12 speed I'm not sure on. It might be a little bit too old. I'd have to double check on that. I might have the slightly older model. And then the other model I have is a CT-3.3. This one should accommodate everything all the way down to 6 speed, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Has an adjustable piece right here that will allow you to do some stuff. This older version that is probably well over 15, possibly 20 years old. It's the CT-3. It's been a super awesome workhorse. What's great about most of the Park Tool stuff, especially on these chain breakers, is that it has a replaceable parts, or if you bend or break something, which I have done a little bit on this drive piece here, they sell a replacement part, so you can just replace that tiny little piece and then continue to use your tool. So I'm going to demonstrate. I have two different types of chains here. This one right here is this is an Eagle. It's a PC. I think it's a PCM1. It's a 1-speed chain. Going to be a little thicker, heftier for those 1-speed bikes. And then I got a SRAM Eagle, which is going to be 12-speed. Anytime you hear Eagle, it should be SRAM 12-speed. So it means that the width of the chain is very narrow. So if we're looking at it this way, width-wise, it is very narrow. This guy over here, if this is a 1, it's going to be the widest we have out there. So that means the gears are wider. Being a single speed doesn't really matter because it's not going to hit another gear next to it. You get into these 12 speeds, we're shoving another gear in there, right? We got a minimal amount of width space. We're shoving 12 gears in there, so width needs to be narrower, so the chain needs to be narrower as well. That's where that comes from. I'm going to start out with this guy here. This is the CT3. Like, again, I think basically over 15 years, possibly 20 years old. Handle got a little bent here. Got a little frisky with it in the vise, so that got bent, but it still functions. The pin, I'll go ahead and take this out so you can see. So this will come out 100%, and then just so you can get to I call it the drive pin. They may call it something different, but this guy right inside here, this piece here, and it's probably about yay long. So there's little notches here. You can get some pliers on it, loosen that. I do put just a touch of thread locker so that stays in there. This can be replaced. This is the pin that's putting pressure on the pins of these chain. So if you come in slightly crooked and we're not lined up, you will accidentally bend your drive pin here. So then you can take this out and replace it if it gets bent or it snaps. And sometimes it just wears over time. What happens with these tips here, sometimes you get some debris. Look like little, really thin rings, and that's left over from every time you push a pin out through your chain. A little bit of debris gets left behind here. It can just slide up and come off, but usually there's a little lip, there's a little edge here. Basically, it's like you were hitting it with a hammer and the edges get curled over, so then it's actual metal that got forged. So if they don't slide up on their own, you might have to just file that edge, either get some sandpaper or a file and just kind of sand that tip right there until that's free. Then all these little rings will come off, and that's the little maintenance that you can do to keep this drive pin looking good. So what this looks like by itself is like this guy here. So going back together, just basically screwing this. So a little more maintenance. You can put either a couple of drops of oil here periodically or a little bit of grease just for lubrication. Doesn't need a whole bunch because you're not putting, you are putting some force on it, but it's not like you're doing it at a speed rate like a machine. So going back to this guy here, so a couple things we want to look at here. We have the area where the chain is going to be placed. So I'm going to call these the cradle. These right here. So there's one here, and then there's one right over here down at the bottom. And this one actually has two sets. So there's another one right over here, boom, and this guy here. So the main one we're going to be using is closest to this end over here. So this would be the end you would be pointing this towards your bike if you had to replace this while the chain was on the bike. Chain goes on this thing. Chain actually is going to sit on this, so these are going to protrude through the links. This one over here is made for a separate purpose. This one here is closest to the solid stationary metal because we do need to brace the chain with this one here. If you stick it here, all you're going to do is bend your chain if you really try and drive this through. And then this area here, this is where your pin's going to slide out. It's going to pop out right there. Boom. That's what's nice about these shop ones. You can get some good leverage on it, and then you're just going to start turning. And at first it's going to take a lot of pressure, and then you're going to hear a pop in some cases, and then we're free. And then this comes apart, and then we just separate, and we're good to go. That guy right there. So that's what you want. This would be a trail side repair. You're leaving that pin in there, and I want that pin to disappear. I want it to be even. I want it to be flush on both sides. I'm going to move it. There is some slight pressure. It's leaving me bent. So yeah, that's all kind of screwy. So that one is pretty tight. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to use the cradle in the back. So I'm using this portion here rather than this guy over here. This one over here is going to allow the chain to flex a little bit, because all I want to do is put gentle pressure on that pin, just enough to wedge it loose. I don't want to actually start pushing the pin through. So I'm going to stick it in the cradle towards the back, and then we're just going to go ahead and I'm going to run this through. And I'm just going to put gentle pressure. I'm going to make contact. Boom, made contact right there. I'm using one finger there, so I'm going very gentle. Then I'm just going to go about that much. So we're doing just a slight flex. It's like you were helping someone stretch their leg out. You're pushing it, you're bending, but you're not being real forceful. Back that out. Take this off, and it should be able to do what your hands can't do. So that's actually moving much better. So moving to this tool here, this is the CT 3.3. This is basically an updated version of the CT3. So it has a sliding, Park Tool's calling it a shelf, but I'm calling it a carriage. So to each their own. This one here, I guess, is pretty cool because you can run if you have a 1-speed, which is going to be very thick, it'll accommodate it. If it's a 12-speed, which is narrower, then this thing will just close to size as needed. But notice it is missing that second cradle like the other one. So I really like that second cradle that helps me straighten out a pin, but maybe the pins are obsolete and they're just focusing on quick links. Maybe that's why they didn't leave it on this one. And you're going to look at other tools too. It could be a bike repair tool that you carry on your bike, may not have that as well. So I guess there's maybe ways around it, but either bending really hard with your hands or just playing with the pin itself, pushing, using this guy, going left side, right side until we loosen up, add a little oil or whatnot. But same idea as far as how it works. Then we jump over to this guy here, which I assume Park Tool's still selling this, and I've had this for a couple years. It's the CT-4.3. This guy here is going to accommodate Campanolo. For those of you who are in the road cycling world, Campanolo is an Italian company. They're probably the third, most popular manufacturer out there. And in my opinion, you got your SRAM, Shimano, or Shimano was around first if you want to be technical. Shimano, then SRAM, and then the third most popular could be Campanolo, which you're going to see that more on your road bikes. So Italian stuff, they make a lot of their parts that can only be used with their tools, but I guess Park Tool is able to make a lot of those tools and sell them to you to work on those Italian campy parts. So that's what this guy is going to accommodate, because their chain, everything about campy is a little different. So with Campanolo. But going to this guy real quick, what's a really neat feature about this right off the bat, it has a place here where the chain gets put in, so it actually has a home for the chain to sit, and it holds it and cradles it nicely so it has nowhere to go. So you would loosen this guy all the way, place your chain in there. You can kind of see a little bit of shape in there. Boom. And putting it on the side so your pin is facing just like that. And then you go ahead and drive your pin down and just make sure you're making centered contact. Boom, right there, and then you just drive. You just start turning this handle, and it's good to go. There's a hole on the end over here. Pin falls out over there. So all that's pretty normal. Again, no inner cradle. So if we had to work on a kinked link to pry it loose, there's nothing there. But let's get this guy back out. So with the Campanolo tool chain, once you push your pin back in, they want you to basically hammer one side of the chain in a sense, where imagine you're shot painting it and you're forging the metal so that pin has no place to go but just stay still. So that's where this piece over here on the end comes in. So you would pull this out with fingernails. So it's about yay big. Flat end on this side. This end over here, it has a flat end, but it has a little bit of a peak on it. So we're going to install this. This has the little peak right here. It's going to be installed this direction, boom, going in. So you want this to be backed off quite a bit. And then this will slide in here. And I'm basically going to push it in all the way. So now that flat head with that little peak is on the inside. So when you put your chain in here, there's certain enough room where it'll catch the chain and hold it and cradle it. And then you go ahead and drive this down. You'd have to see the Campy tool or the actual the pin that they use. It's kind of like a two-piece pin that has a sliding sleeve. So once you tighten this, you're going to apply some pressure, not a ton of pressure, just enough to forge some metal, which is going to keep the pin from accidentally coming out of this chain. And that's the extra step Campinolo does. They think that's going to ensure any accidental pin loosening, but in most cases, like our chains with like the KMC, Shimano, SRAM, everything, usually doesn't have that problem. So theirs may not have it either. They just wanted to go that extra step, kind of like over engineering possibly. Maybe there's another reason. If you know, let me know in the comments. So for what I use most of the time in the shop, this older one can be my go-to. It's been around forever. It's super heavy. Replace the pin, replaceable pin when needed. They last quite a long time as long as you don't abuse them. So that's definitely good. For classes, I'll use that guy. I'll use the new one here with the sliding adjustable shelf or cradle right there. Another workhorse right here, great for the shop. You got plenty of leverage, get your hands on, plenty of leverage here compared to what you would have on your bike. Sometimes your tool is this big and you're using two fingertips to hold this, and then maybe you're using fingers here, or your tool breaks in half and allows you to put an Allen tool here and get some better leverage. So it just depends on your multi-tool. So that's something you might want to check out. Get used to it. Try your multi-tool at home first before you have to really try it. You're stuck out on the trail or the road. This guy is very cool too. It's no nonsense. Again, it has the shape of the chain, so chain sits in there perfectly. And then you just drive this guy in. Usually not a problem, boom. But this has a replaceable pin as well. You're gonna take this out all the way. This one has some knurling here, so you can it's actually a locking sleeve. That was a little bit loose. But you would loosen this locking sleeve, slide that out, releases your pin. You can buy these online, get them from Park Tool, I think too, and these little pins can be replaced as well. I broke it probably my third use when I first got this because I was not aligned correctly. I kind of came in crooked, applied pressure, didn't hit the pin exactly. I was hitting something solid and this just snapped, so that was my fault. But once I replaced this, got the hang of it, boom, not a problem. I love these rubber handles. Ergonomic, soft, great grip. Get your fingers on this, really easy, fun to use. Same with the handle portion. Nice big grip, probably a hard plastic with the hard rubber. All these tools are pretty durable. Get a little dirty, you can wipe them down, but as far as grip, they're great. Just overall good tools. People come into the shop and they're like, oh, you have a lot of Park Tool. I said, well, they kind of dominate the market, but also I wouldn't have them if their tools were subpar. I'd say, 90% of their tools are pretty badass. They're doing the job. I'm definitely into quality. I do like a little bling now and then, but a lot of those companies who are doing that, they really charge a lot because you're getting some anodized aluminums, comes in different colors.